Will Michael Penix be the end of Joe Schoen? Welcome back to the Everything New York Giants podcast with New York Giants fangirl. I'm Adriana. I'm your host. The Giants take on the Falcons in Atlanta on Sunday, and the Falcons announced that Michael Penix is going to be their starter. It will be the first time that we see him since preseason, and we all know that when the Falcons took Michael Penix at number 8 overall, we were all quite surprised because they had just signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million deal. And now 15 weeks into the season, we are seeing Michael Penix. I'm excited to see him. I think that knowing the Giants and what has gone on with them over this season, they will make Michael Penix look like Joe Montana in his debut. So I'm excited to see that. I really liked Michael Penix. My biggest concern with him was the fact that he's a lefty, and going into the season, it was either going to be Illuminor or Evan Neal, who was going to be his right tackle. So for me, that was the concern. I liked him way better than I liked JJ McCarthy, but I'm excited for him. He is a great guy. I was lucky enough that I got to meet him last year right before the Heisman ceremony. Him and the 3 other candidates, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams. Was it Caleb Williams? I don't know. Anyway, they were all at Raising Cane's, and I got to meet them all, and they were all fantastic. So I wish them all well, and I'm excited to see Michael Penix. Let's talk about this whole Michael Penix situation, because the narrative that I'm seeing on social media right now is that if Michael Penix has an amazing game and an amazing rest of the season, is that the nail in the coffin for Joe Schoen to get fired because he had the opportunity to pick Michael Penix and he didn't? And in my opinion, the answer to that is no, because you could say that for Bo Nix and Michael Penix. And I don't really think that just if Michael Penix does well and the Giants make him look good, that's going to make all that much of a difference. Honestly, I think he's probably going to look great, realistically, knowing this team and knowing what they're up against. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he looks really good. And I think ultimately everyone was obviously on board with them picking Neighbors. I think it would have been probably more of a concern if JJ McCarthy had a great year this year. Obviously he got injured, so that's not the case, but it sounded like it was going to be between Neighbors and potentially JJ McCarthy, and obviously they went Neighbors. So I don't know. I just feel like regardless of what happens with Michael Penix, I don't really think that's going to make a difference for Joe Schoen. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments, but I really don't think that's it. I think there's a lot of things that you can point to as to why Joe Schoen should be fired, especially when it comes to roster construction and the draft picks that he's made over the last 3 years. And I don't necessarily think that just Michael Penix would be the one who did that. I think, like I said, there's a lot of other reasons if you wanted to fire Joe Schoen. Speaking of Joe Schoen, let's talk about this narrative that is now being pushed by a certain group of beat writers who are trying to, I think, warm up or prepare the fan base for the very likely possibility that they are going to fire Brian Daboll and keep Joe Schoen. And in my opinion, you either have to keep both or get rid of both. I don't think that keeping one of them is a good idea. We have been through this twice where the Giants have decided to keep the GM and fire the head coach. And both of those times, it has not led to winning seasons. It's not led to good drafts. It has not led to anything good at all. So it just would not make any sense to me to do that. If you're going to do it right and clean house instead of this half-ass bullshit for the 3rd time in a row that, like I said, does nothing good for the fan base, for the franchise, for the organization as a whole. It's a disaster. And I think that you could even make the argument that Joe Schoen has been worse at his job than Brian Daboll, that it doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're going to keep one of them, you could make the argument that you should keep Daboll as opposed to Schoen because of what Schoen has done in the drafts and what this team now looks like 3 years into this rebuild and plan, whatever their plan was. They are significantly worse. And forget about year one, okay? Year one was a literal miracle. No one expected that. I'm talking about even from last year to this year. Forget about the wins for a second. The team is significantly worse. They are playing horribly. And I actually think, I might be one of the few people that thinks this, I actually think the roster has more talent on it right now. I think the coaching staff is not getting the best out of the talent that's on the roster. In my opinion, I just don't think Dable and the coaching staff that he assembled is very good. And I just feel like you can't get rid of one of them and not both. Like it's the definition of insanity of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I understand for John Mara that this is very difficult. I understand that he doesn't want to fire people. I don't think anyone wants to have to fire people. It's probably not a good experience for anyone involved. But I just think at some point, like you have to look at what's happened in the past and you have to look at what you did in 2016 and 2018 and whatever the years were and just look at it and say, this didn't work. We've done this twice and it didn't work. So why is it going to work now? Because Joe Schoen has had one good draft out of 3, because he's brought in some good free agents. Like, I don't know what the argument is. I have no idea what the conversations that they are having are based on. I really, like, I couldn't tell you what the defense is for Joe Schoen. I really don't know, like, what the defense is for him versus Brian Dable. I mean, you brought them in together. They have a really good relationship. There was this article that came out from Paul Schwartz that said that, they still have a really good relationship, but he's feeling or thinking, or it sounds like, John Mara is going to tell Joe Schoen that he's allowed to stay, but he has to fire the coach. And I mean, they have a really good relationship, Schoen and Dable. So then, you've got Joe Schoen, who probably has one foot out the door, not because of him, because of John Mara, because John Mara and Steve Tisch are going to put the pressure on him that you're allowed to stay, but you're allowed to stay under the guys that you got a franchise quarterback and, you bring in a good head coach. But if you're a head coach, you're thinking, well, I don't know how long Joe Schoen is going to stay on board. So like, how long am I going to have to try and turn this organization around? And then if it's not Joe Schoen, then you're the head coach in a position where you're potentially working with Joe Schoen for 1 year. And then if Joe Schoen gets fired next year, then you're bringing in a new GM and forcing the head coach on them. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And it infuriates me that it's even a consideration. It should not be a consideration. And like I said, I don't care what the argument is. The bottom line is that Joe Schoen has not been a top tier GM in the NFL. And that should be enough based on what this roster looks like, based on what our record has been for the last 2 years, based on the horrific product that we see week in and week out for the last 2 years. That should be enough for you to say, I have to clean house and I don't like it and I don't want to do it and this is going to suck. But I'm a big boy and I can pull up my big boy pants and I can do what's right for this franchise, because at the end of the day, I'm a fan first and I also want to win, and I'm sick of the planes flying around, making it, my fault and all the pressure on me. When you're the owner of the team, it's par for the course. You don't want to be the owner and you don't want planes flying around and fans writing you letters to tell you how much you suck, then give it up. Because if you don't want to do the work and you don't want to be the bad guy, I said this 3 years ago and I will say it again now. I do not care how many firings it takes for them to get it right. Do I want it to happen sooner than later? Yes. Was I on board with Schoen and Dable? Yes. I thought at the time, this is great. They know what they're doing. This is going to be awesome. I even up until probably a couple weeks ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, felt like, okay, maybe they just need a franchise quarterback. Maybe they need one more draft and one more free agency where they're finally going to have a good amount of draft picks and they're going to have the opportunity to get their franchise quarterback. And, they're going to have some cap space to really make some good moves in free agency and bring in some talent. And then maybe we can give them one more year and we can figure it out. But I just don't think that there's any good reason why that should be the case at this point. And I know there are people who are on board with keeping them. And if you're on board with keeping them, do your best to persuade me. Give me the reasons why you want them to stay. I am open to listening. And at the end of the day, if they end up keeping Joe Schoen, I'm going to do nothing about it. Okay. I'm going to support him. He's the GM. It is what it is. I want him to succeed, just like I wanted Dable to succeed. But I cannot watch this football team week in and week out and say that Brian Dable is a good head coach. I just can't do it. I think he would be a really good offensive coordinator. I think a head coach is not for him. And that's my opinion. And say this all the time. I'm not a coaching expert. I am not a scouting expert. Okay. I know that his job is extremely challenging. I know that the quarterback situation is a mess, but part of that is because of him and Joe Schoen, and they brought it on themselves. So, it's just, it's crazy. Like, it's not as the fans, like, it's not our fault that they can't figure it out. But if it takes them blowing it up again this year to bring in a good GM and a head coach together again, and a new defensive coordinator and a whole new staff, whatever it is, if they decide to blow it up, obviously I will support it. And I will say the same thing that I said before, is that, if it took us going through all of these people and this is the right GM and head coach for the next decade, I don't throw a fucking parade. Like, this is all we are asking for, is to get it right. And if John Mara needs to bring in some sort of help, if Steve Tisch needs to pay to bring in someone from the NFL, like they did back in, I think, the 70s, or whatever they need to do, figure it out. But we are going on a decade of really bad football, and you trying to get fans in the building to watch this disgusting mess week in and week out is not working. And it's especially not working when the ticket prices are going up every single year and the PSL is a thing. So my message to John Mara, if you so happen to be watching this, you have to blow it up and get some outside help to direct you on the right thing. Because as a fan, I have the option to become a season ticket holder. I'm very fortunate that I could afford it if I want to do it. And I will not do it because, number one, I refuse to pay the PSL because it's a fucking scam and it's a joke. And it's ridiculous that after decades of Giant Stadium, you now make your fans pay that to go to MetLife, where they share it with the Jets. It's embarrassing. And on top of that, I am not paying thousands of dollars just for the tickets for the season to, by week 10, take a loss on every single ticket because I can't sell them, because no one wants to go to games, myself included. I'm free on the 29th. I could go to the Colts game if I wanted to. I could have gone to the Ravens game. I got offered free tickets, which is very generous. And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend 3 hours round trip in my car to go to the stadium, to pay for parking, to sit there and tailgate in the cold, and to sit at the stadium for an hour and a half and leave at halftime because the product on the field is so bad. I mean, if you want to make money, like, you have to change something because it's obviously not working. So just very frustrating. And I know that most of us, I know all of us feel the same way, but I know that, most of us, I think, are on board with blowing it up because it just feels like it's the only way to actually get ahead of this and to get it right from the beginning. Like, you can't do the head coach thing again and keep the GM. It's just a recipe for disaster. And I don't have a crystal ball. I have an amazing snow globe from Starter. Thank you for this. I love it. This is going to be my crystal ball for a second. Like, I don't have a crystal ball to tell you whether or not, if you bring in this next GM and head coach together, that it's going to work. But what I can tell you, what likely is not going to work, is bringing on a new head coach for maybe 1 or 2 years. And then hoping for 1 or 2 years that it's fixed. Because Joe Schoen has shown you in 3 years that he's not a great GM. And like I have said repeatedly, I think Joe Schoen is a wonderful guy. I actually was one of the few people who came out of Hard Knocks and was like, he's great. Like, this is fun. I enjoyed watching it. It is what it is. And, it's a performance-based business. If you work in sales and you don't hit your numbers repeatedly, you get fired. If you're an insurance agent and you don't sell policies, you get fired. If you are in any type of job and you are not performing, you get fired. And unfortunately, for most of us who are in average people jobs, we don't make the type of money that these people make. So if you're not doing your job and you're not doing it well, then why do you deserve to stay there? You have a performance review. I don't know what you're saying in that performance review, but it's not showing up. You can say whatever you want. It's not showing up in the results. So something's got to change. So that's where I'm at. Let's talk about the injury reports because it has been released. The three players that are officially ruled as out are outside linebacker Patrick Johnson with a knee injury, inside linebacker Bobby Okereke with a back. This is, I think, the third week in a row that he is not playing, which at this point, it's fine. He's not. I love Bobby O, and I think he's a really good football player. Him being on the field is not all of a sudden going to make us win games. This team is a disaster. And then offensive lineman Aaron Stinney, who has a concussion. The one player that's listed as doubtful is cornerback Greg Stroman. He's dealing with a shoulder shin injury. And then we've got a couple questionable guys. So Deontay Banks dealing with a rib, Burns with an ankle/neck, Deontay Johnson with an ankle, Schlottman with a fibula, and then Tyrone Tracy with an ankle. So I feel like all five guys that are listed as questionable are going to play. That's typically how it works, unless something happens in pregame warmups, which, knowing the Giants, like, wouldn't be surprised if that happens during pregame where one or two players are get injured and then they're out for the game. Would be the third time now that's happened this year. So no surprise there if that does happen. I would like to see Deontay Banks back. I want him to end the season on the high note. He was a first-round pick, and whether or not we have a new GM or a head coach, he's not going anywhere. He's on a rookie contract. Show me what you got. Make it good. Make me be excited that you are on my football team, because right now I think a lot of us don't feel that way about Tay Banks, and it's unfortunate because I know a lot of us were, up in the air about the pick at the time, and then last year he looks great. We're all excited about it, and then this year it's like the plane crashing. So I would like to see him end the season on the high note. Burns, I love Brian Burns. I would love to see him play. If he doesn't play, honestly, I'm completely fine with it, because let the guy rest. He's injured. Like, I want him to get sacks and play well and get, pressures and hits and all the things to inflate his stat numbers. It's great. But, if he doesn't play, like I said, we're not winning this game. I can almost guarantee that Michael Penix is going to come out and we are going to make him look like a superstar immediately. He's immediately going to have the confidence. Like, he's going to go 1-for-1 on his first pass play because no one's going to get a hand on it. And he's going to be like, oh yeah, I can do this. And I'll be like, good job, Michael Penix. You deserve it. I don't know what to say. Good for him. What I will say is that now I'm all conflicted on this, because I don't know what the over-under is for Bijan Robinson, but I would say it's probably not more than 70 yards. Let's check. But I was like, I think I'm going to take the Bijan. I'm going to take the under on the running back this week, because obviously the last 2 weeks I've taken the over, and as we know, the run defense decided to show up out of nowhere. Thanks a lot for that. But I don't know what the deal is going to be this week. Let's look at Bijan Robinson. But I do feel like I was planning on taking the under, but I'm like, watch this. The 1 week that I'm like, I'm going to take the under, the run defense is going to be like, oh, we can't do it 3 weeks in a row. This week is not the week. Would that surprise me? Absolutely not. So let's pull this up. Thank God this is a 1:00 game. The Falcons are 8.5-point favorites. 8.5-point favorites. Wow. Okay, let's look at the receiving props for Neighbors. So Neighbors is 68.5 is the over-under. Falcons defense, I feel like, is not great. I do feel like I would maybe take the over on Neighbors. They do not have Daniel Bellinger on here, but when they do put Daniel Bellinger on here, it's likely going to be like 14 or 15 yards. I'm taking the over because Drew Lock is back, and the Daniel Bellinger has had pretty good games since Lock has been the quarterback. Over the last few weeks, he's done pretty well. So I would take the over on that, in my opinion. Darius Slayton, this is crazy. 26.5. He has suffered significantly since Daniel Jones was released, and I feel bad for him, not just like personally, but also professionally. 26.5 yards. I mean, outside of Neighbors, he should be the number 2. Like, if Neighbors averages, 55 yards a game, Slayton should at least be averaging 40. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it. All right, now let's look at the rushing. Wow, Bijan is 88.5. I'm taking the under on that. And you know why? Because if Derrick Henry cannot get 88 yards against our defense, Bijan Robinson sure as hell is not going to. This is on FanDuel, by the way, so I'm going to take the under there. Tyrone Tracy is 47.5, and then they have Tyler Algier at 37.5. So Obviously, I don't think the Giants are going to come any close at all to beating the Falcons. Like I said, I think Michael Penix is going to do just fine. I would like to see our DBs get some hands on it. Stroman actually had a pretty good game last week, but it sounds like he's going to be out this week. With Tay Banks back, is that going to make a difference? I don't know. Under normal circumstances, I would lean towards yes, but based on what he's done in the second half of this year, I would say probably not. Actually, throughout most of this year, probably not. So, I don't really feel very confident that we're going to be able to stop the run or the pass. So what else is new? And Tommy DeVito has cleared concussion protocol, so he is going to be the backup to Drew Lock. So that means that Tim Boyle is going to be the emergency third string quarterback. So we shouldn't see Tim Boyle this week. We're going to see Drew Lock. And Drew Lock, they don't have an over-under on the rushing. I'm curious if they add that by the time Sunday rolls around, because they really have taken advantage of the fact that Lock is willing to run and I guess can run kind of decently. So I will be curious to see if they add that, because if it's like 10 or 15 yards, I'm also going to take the over on that, because I think that Dable is going to try and take advantage of that and have Locke run the ball where he can. So keep your eyes peeled for that. That'll be interesting. Neighbors is really close to getting to 1,000 yards. So if he can get, I would love it if he could do it this week. It's going to be tough. But again, Drew Lock, I really hope that they're going to throw the ball down the field. The offensive line has to do their job. John Michael Schmitz, please, for the love of God, stop getting blown up multiple times a game. You're killing us. I don't, like I said, I'm on board with this team losing, but let me just see a little bit of excitement on the offense. Let's see Jalen Hyde get involved. Let me see him have a couple receptions and catch the ball for 30 yards. Darius Slayton, would love for him to have a good game. The poor guy, it's going to be a rough end of the season for him. And then, of course, Neighbors. I just want him to get there. Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy could be the first pair of rookies to both get over 1,000 yards since Reggie Bush, and I forget who the other guy was, but it's been a long time since that happened. Obviously, Reggie Bush has been retired for quite some time now. So I think, we have something to look forward to, right? Is that our rookies are good. And, I know there's been a lot of defense in Joe Schoen for that he has had a really good rookie class. And I agree with that. He absolutely has, but it's not really fair to grade a draft class on 1 year. So you need to give them the full 3 years. And when the season is over, we'll grade his first draft class, the 2022 class, Kayvon Neal. We all know how that went, but McFadden, there were some good things that came out of it. So in the off season, we will go through all of that, grading draft classes, talk about free agency, and obviously we're going to see what happens with the front office and the coaching staff. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for listening. I am going to be live streaming the game on Sunday, so join me. Whether or not you're watching the game, if you have the time, hop in 1 p.m. I will be on YouTube. It's Everything New York Giants right here from 1 p.m. until whenever the game is over. We can talk Giants, Mets, Yankees, playoffs, college football, whatever you want to talk about, who we think our new quarterback is going to be, any of it. But hop on, let's have some fun. Let's, commiserate together about this god-awful New York Giants team and maybe make some predictions about the future. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. If it's snowed by you or is snowing by you, be safe, be careful. Have a great weekend. I will see you guys on Sunday, and I will be back Monday with a recap podcast. Enjoy. Go Giants.